Welcome to Maximum Impact Episode 8 with Tucker Max, best-selling author, angel investor, and co-founder and CEO of Book in a Box. We discuss his transformation from a self-professed asshole to a respectable author, investor, and CEO of a disruptive book publishing empire. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Allan Isfan and I'm a tech entrepreneur with a fascination for disruption. I created this podcast to bring together the brightest minds in the areas of personal development, exponential technology, and business to help entrepreneurs train their minds, launch and grow disruptive businesses that make our world a better place. Now, today's guest is Tucker Max. Now, Tucker is a well-known author with millions of books sold and is an absolutely fascinating individual. He actually started out his writing career by documenting his party lifestyle in emails that he sent around to friends. He's got so much interest and traction that he decided to turn to books with titles like I Hope to Serve Beer in Hell and Sloppy Seconds. You get the idea. Look him up. Some pretty interesting stuff out there. Now, he really did find some huge success with that. I mean, just millions and millions of books and even a movie. He then turned to angel investing in, I think, over 80 companies, and ultimately the creation of Book in a Box, which is a really cool new service that helps virtually anyone with something valuable to say into an author. Book in a Box has pioneered a really cool technique that is based on having someone essentially interview the author to be in order to extract their knowledge and wisdom. And then they turn that into a book.
Hey, Tucker, welcome to Maximum Impact.
Thank you for having me, man.
My pleasure. We met at Mastermind in Napa last spring, and, I just found you were like super honest with the audience, giving. I mean, you had your family there as well. And as far as I know, it's a super premium event, but, the speakers don't get paid. So you share a lot. Why do you do it?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. I think, first off, it's just kind of how I am. I've always found deception or anything like that to just be fucking exhausting, to be honest. It's way easier and way more fulfilling to just be honest on a basic level, on a human level. On a business level, I think we're going through, I think it makes sense on a business level as well because we're going through a massive shift, I think. Basically, advantages in business used to be conferred by whatever you want to call it, secret sauce. Like I know how to do something someone else doesn't or something like that, and you could protect that advantage for a long amount of time. And I think that day is basically over. There pretty much are no more secret sauces. There are no more secrets at all. It's basically comes down to how good your network is and how well you execute. And you can control your execution in a lot of ways, but the only way I know of to build a network is to share things with people and to do things for them and to kind of give value to the network to get value back. And one of the ways I can give value is by sharing. I'm a pretty smart dude and I'm curious and I learn a lot of new things and I share them. And then, here's a great example. Here I am on your podcast because I did that at that event,
That's pretty awesome. And, when you think about it, regardless of where we look at in timeline, you've been doing that from the beginning. The books that you wrote, in the early days seem to have come out of just stuff that you were sharing with your friends by email and people kind of got a kick out of it. And, that created a huge amount of momentum. And you weren't, sending emails for money.
Well, no, it's actually, you bring up a great point. I was giving my writing away for free back when no one thought that was, not only did no one think that was a viable business model, you were actually looked on as low status and ghetto if you did that. And now it's like everyone does that, And the real honest answer is I was doing that because I had no other way to get my stuff out there. So in one way I got lucky, but in the other way it was, I kept going with it. It's not like once I realized I was popular, I took everything offline and then was like, all right, I got to hide it now. I was like, no, I'm going to keep going with what makes me me.
That's awesome, and it's obviously worked, extremely well. There's a great Ottawa artist named John Carroll, and one of his most popular songs is called "Everybody Smokes in Hell." And I thought that would have been a great soundtrack for "I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell." Here, the movie and book have the same name and so on. One of the most fascinating things that I find, and when I chat with people in this podcast, is transformations. Like, what appears to be at one extreme goes to the other, or an idea that just starts out small and it just, gains momentum. I mean, obviously you didn't just change, like you transformed, but it looked like it was along the same line of giving. So take us back a little bit to the days of that book and the movie, and what sort of clicked for you when you, I think, sort of turned the corner and saw the world a little bit differently.
Yeah, I can sum all of it up, I think, with one phrase. I realized that it's not about me. I think for the first part of my life, I think pretty much everything I did was about me, and what I learned, I think I was about 34, 35, that it's not about me. It's not that I don't matter, and it's not that I shouldn't take care of myself or pursue things I want or anything like that. It's just that if all I do is focus on myself and care about myself and see the world through my own eyes, then I'm going to be very limited and I'm not going to succeed very much. I mean, I succeeded quite a bit doing that, but still nowhere near what I was capable of and what I wanted to do. And once I realized it wasn't about me, that it was about us, like me and the people I love and the people I care about and pretty much everyone else, then it took me maybe, I mean, I'm still in the process, but it took me a good 3-4 years to really make that shift. But once I did, it was like, I can approach the world in a very different way,
Were there a few things that you may have done to kind of realize that, or did you sort of get to the top and it was empty or lonely, or was it things like meditation or?
So all right, so the one of the big turning points for me was, anyone who's successful on almost any level will go through some version of this. What will happen is you'll have this dream in your head of what success is going to be like and what it'll feel like and what it'll get you and what you need to be successful. And then you'll reach that, or you'll surpass it, and you'll realize that, I don't want to say everything's the same, but that very little has changed. You still have all kinds of problems. They're totally different types of problems, but it's almost like nothing's really changed. You maybe have a nicer car, you live in a better place, you eat a little bit better food, you dress a little bit better, but you're still you, and your problems don't go away because you have money. And so that's exactly what happened to me. I looked up one day and I was far more famous and far richer and far more everything than I thought I needed to be happy. And I was much happier than when I was poor and broke and miserable, but I still wasn't really that happy, And so when you fix everything externally, and then of course then I was like, all right, I'm going to get in the best shape possible, and I did. And then I like, all right, well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. I fixed everything. Like there was nothing wrong with. Not only was nothing wrong with me externally, like it was hard to be better than me. But I wasn't happy. And when you have to, when that's the case, you need to realize, all right, the only thing left is me. The only thing left is my thoughts and my patterns and my decisions and whatever. Like that's the only thing that I need to go fix. And then so from there, or I need to change or alter. And so from there, I decided to go into therapy, and the modality that I chose was psychoanalysis, and I did that for 4 years, 4 times a week, and that taught me a lot and helped me a lot. And then when I paired that in my final year with meditation, which was really beneficial, and I meditated this morning. I try to meditate for 20 minutes a day, and which is not much. It's basically the minimum you can get away with if you're serious. And man, meditation is really hard. And then, but here's what's funny: those two things. People always ask me, "What did you do?" But those two things, you can do those two things, and they don't mean shit if you don't use them to actually make changes in your life that result in quality relationships and connections with people you care about, and doing work that you love that matters. I've always been doing. One of the things work was never my problem. One of the things that people always respected about me and looked up to me, and what makes my writing so popular, is that I've never been afraid to say to hell with it to whatever the system and do the work I wanted and the way I wanted. That's never been my problem. My problem has always been connections and relationships. I think a lot of my issues are pretty common. They just look a little different in me. It's hard to be vulnerable. It's hard to be close to people. It's hard, all those sorts of things. And so I use analysis and meditation and a lot of other things to slowly but surely get better at that. And now here I am. I have an amazing woman that I'm married to and a great relationship with her and a kid and another one on the way. And I've never had problems with friends, but it was really super close relationship. And I want to say everything's fixed, dude, but it's like that sort of change led to where I am now, and it's a different path now, Well,
I'm curious, it's sort of to keep that line going around writing, because, writing's always been part of what you do, and it's one of the major topics we've been chatting on Skype about, writing books and so on. And, I'm finding that writing is, I meditate, about 20 minutes a day or so, 5:30 in the morning, pretty regularly. But I'm finding that writing is one of the ways that I'm getting my head straight. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's kind of like an extension of the meditation. I write best after I meditate kind of early in the morning. And sometimes I'm writing for myself. I'm like, it's not a chapter in a book or anything like that. It's just I'm trying to sort something out. And the only way I seem to be able to do it is to write it down as if somebody else is going to read it. That kind of, is that common? Have you seen that before? Does that happen to you? Or
yes.
Is that just kind of me?
Dude, Allan, you know what's funny is the vast majority of people who want to be writers don't actually care about being writers. They need therapy, and they see writing as a non-shameful way of getting therapy. Yeah, dude, that's not only is that super common, that's dominant, I think. That's the purpose of a diary, dude. That's why diaries exist. That's what it is.
That's pretty awesome. And it's funny because I'll go in there and rewrite certain pieces that don't sound right as if somebody else is gonna read it. But when we had a Skype call last week, I think you were in the process of writing when I called you. Like how much do you write? You've had a bunch of books. How much of your time is spent doing that versus running a business and all that jazz?
So I am a writer. So it's a little different for me probably than maybe for other people. If you're not a writer, if you just like journaling or writing in a diary, then basically my recommendation would be block out 30 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever you need, whenever you feel most comfortable. For me, writing is a profession. Like I do it now for my company, So what I do is I block out, my day kind of goes, I wake up, well now because my son is 18 months old and he doesn't like sleep the way I do. He gets up at 6:30, so it means I get up at 6:30. And so we go downstairs, he and I make coffee, and then he eats his little cricket bar, and we watch Daniel Tiger, and then we'll play a little bit or something. And if he's not interested in playing with me, then I'll check email or something. I just kind of dick around. And then usually he's off to preschool by 8, and then I meditate for 20 minutes, and then I block out from 8 o'clock until 11:30 for meditation and creative work. And no one can schedule a meeting with me then. No one calls me. I turn Slack off so my people don't bother me. They know they're not going to get through to me probably. And some days, man, I'll be honest, I get basically nothing done. And other days, I crank out 3,000 words, and it's incredible. It really just kind of depends on a couple different factors. I've got some pretty good techniques for learning, for how to be productive even if I'm not feeling it that day. Like, I always have multiple projects going on at once, and so if I'm stuck, I start with the most important one, and if I just cannot make progress, I mean, if I can't make progress, then I kind of think through why not, what's stopping me, and I try and fix that, and if I can't fix it, then I just go on to something else. But even doing that, man, there are days I just get nothing done. But the point is, I block out the time every day, and every day except Saturdays. And I sit down, ass in seat, and I try to work. There's no other way to get work done, whether you're talking about creative writing or programming or whatever. It just kind of doesn't matter. You make the time and you concentrate and you do it.
Right. So you have the book in a box concept that I find super fascinating for those people that are not necessarily authors. Now they could be authors, I suppose, and I know that you work with some that I certainly consider authors. That's what they do, and they do other things. They keynote. They do.
They're all everyone we work with is an author. They may not be authors. May not be their primary sort of job and the primary source of income, but once you work with us, you become an author. Yeah.
You become an author. Yeah. Yeah. So explain to me sort of the genesis behind Book in a Box. I mean, it's something that I find so incredibly fascinating. Like when I estimated the amount of time it would take to do everything from the creative to editing to getting copywriters to cover to just all of that stuff, and multiplied by what I would charge somebody an hourly fee to consult. What you guys have put together is pretty incredible, and I really want people to know about Book in a Box, kind of how it started and what the steps are that you walk them through on your Skype call.
Yeah, so it started, man. I was at an entrepreneurial dinner, and it was kind of like MMT, like that type of crowd, where we met. And this woman asked me, she's like, basically, how do I write a book without having to sit down and write it? Like, she's got all this knowledge and wisdom in her head, and people have been asking her to write the book for years, and she doesn't have time. And she thought the publishing process was nonsense, which it is. And so I kind of made fun of her. Well, it's hard to write a book without writing it. The word write is literally in the verb. Like, I don't know how to do it without doing it. And so she's like, look, this is an entrepreneur dinner. Are you an entrepreneur? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, I don't know, because I'm an entrepreneur and I spend all day helping people solve problems. Are you going to help me solve my problem, or are you just going to lecture me about hard work? And I was like, all right. She totally called me out, and she was 100% right. And so I became obsessed with this idea. How do I get a book out of her head without her having to write it? And long story short, it was kind of, once I thought about it, it became really obvious. I mean, like, Socrates didn't write anything down. Jesus didn't write anything down. Buddha didn't write anything down. All these two guys all had scribes. And so I was like, oh, obviously, like, there's this idea that writing and thinking are the same thing, but they're not at all. And so really all I did was create a system and leverage technology and sort of a modern understanding of book structure to create sort of like a modern scribe system. And what we do is, just over the phone, we spend about 15 to 20 hours on the phone with somebody, and we position their book, meaning, like, we understand where it fits in the market, who the audience is, all that kind of, what they want to get from it, all that sort of stuff. We help them, we structure it and outline it, and then from that outline, we have professional journalists who interview them and get everything out of their heads, all their knowledge and wisdom. We record that, we get it transcribed, and then we edit that transcription into sort of a book, and it's all their words, their ideas, their voice. Even we're not adding any content. I mean, our authors are surgeons and direct marketers and engineers. We don't know about how to run a surgical career. We're not adding any content. We're just translating their ideas into books.
Now, you still need to create an outline, though? Like, you'd have to come with, what kind of detailed outline or bullets?
No, you don't. If you were the author, you wouldn't do it. We do it. All you have to do is talk to us on the phone. Like, we have, so it's kind of cool. It feels like magic to you as an author, because all you do is talk about what you already know and answer questions. But on the back end, it's obviously not magic at all. We essentially have an algorithmic process. We know exactly what we have to get out of you. And then we have all these different, essentially, questions to get it out. And it's like a recursive algorithm where we just keep asking variations of different types of questions until we get out of you what we need in order to position your book, structure the outline, fill out the outline, et cetera, et cetera. And we, like, the people that we have doing this are all book editors or former book agents or even best-selling authors on their own right. People have decades of experience, but they operate within our system. And so, we have templates and all this stuff. I wrote all of this in the book, the Book in a Box method. Like, we have a book that describes the entire process and how it works. So, like, we're expensive. Like, to work with us is $20,000 at least, if not sometimes up to $50,000. But people can do this on their own without us. Anyway, so that gets you to the manuscript, like the finished manuscript. And the way we edit it is actually pretty cool. So instead of sending like a Word file to you, what we do is we actually print out the rough draft and mail it to you, and then you get back on the phone with your editor and you read it out loud. And what happens is you're able to hear all the mistakes and the sort of misphrasings and things much easier than you can edit. Because it's very hard to read something on the page and to yourself and understand how it's going to reach out to people. But as soon as you say it out loud, you're like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound right at all. And so then at that point, that's basically a finished book. Once that editing process is done, then we do all the sort of things you have to do to publish and distribute a professional book. So we do, amazing book cover with the best book cover designers in the world, interior layout, author bio, author description, put it on Amazon, printing, all that kind of stuff, all the details. We just handle all that. So you've got an amazing book.
That's awesome. All for basically 15 to 20K. Now your pricing has been varying a little bit from a year ago to now. I mean, it's going up a little bit. No, it's not varying, man.
But it's going up. It's going up.
It's just going up. Yeah, that's really what I was gonna say. You read between the lines there. Yeah, but I mean, it's you're adding more. What are the things that you figure you want to layer on, or are you ultimately going to try to automate some of these pieces with more software so you can scale it more? Like, what's the next step for Book in a Box?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So we raised the price for a couple reasons. One is the honest answer is we were undercharging at the beginning and we didn't quite really understand. There's a perceived value issue that people thought, well, if it's only $15,000, how good could it be? And the reality is we were doing a better job than ghostwriters who were charging $50,000 or $100,000. So part of the reason we had to raise prices is just to make it look like what it is, Like that was part of it. The other part of it is we have just a much better process now. We actually have one of those weird processes that gets better as it scales as opposed to getting worse. Most things, quality decreases. For us, quality increases because the more books we do, the better we get at not only doing them, and each book we learn from and we get a little bit better, but we also get better freelancers. We're able to pay more and hire better freelancers, and we can train them better. And so every book makes us better. And so it's just a resilient, a resilient anti-fragile process. And so that's the other reason we're charging more. And then we do a little bit marketing stuff now. That's about it. Long term, it's a really good question. So long term, I don't think we're going to be doing much automating of the high touch concierge service. The 20,000 or the 50,000, if you're paying that, you're paying because you want a professional publishing team that is going to give you an experience that feels magical and results in an amazing book in very, very little time. But what we can do is I think we can provide a similar experience for substantially less money by automating a lot of different parts. So I think we may eventually be able to make the price 10x cheaper, maybe even 100x cheaper, using sort of a combination of bots, of automated sort of deep learning AI software, and the author putting in just more time. You couldn't do it in 20 hours like that, but maybe 200 hours with a very systematic step-by-step process paired up with certain developments in AI. I think we could bring the price down substantially. So we would essentially have 2, maybe 3 different offerings, like a really expensive high-end, a moderately expensive mid-tier, and then a really cheap version. And each one would be very effective, but it would just change the amount of time you're spending, you know?
Yeah, I know. It's funny because you had sent me the step-by-step process to do it myself, and one of the tips in there, which I thought really kind of interesting and surprising, is that you and I guess it shouldn't be surprising based on your technique, is that you literally record yourself and then listen to it as if, you know, one of your guys was listening to it, and then, you know, writing it out from there. And it's funny because I'm already doing this podcast, and every week I'm going to be doing a solo round. Like I just did one on meditation, and you know, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and they tend to be like 6, 8, 10 hours. So it kind of dawned on me that if I did it right, I could basically do my solo rounds in the guise of essentially chapters of the book or components of that book. And so I sort of double dip, I suppose.
You absolutely could. We actually have no, that's really smart, Alan. We actually have clients who tell us the book is essentially the starting point for a media platform they want to create. And so what we do is we structure the outline and the book so that each chapter is not only a blog post, but can also be a podcast. Yeah, absolutely. You can do that. Now,
okay.
It's got to be intentional. You can't really get lucky and fall into that, but you can intentionally structure a book like that, no doubt.
Yeah, well, I'm just starting it out, starting out the podcast, and been thinking about the book. So that's the approach I'm going to take, at least to start off with. Now, it's a good segue for the business stuff I was hoping to talk to you about, because, you know, obviously you've been fired a bunch of times. You've been independent, you know, since then, and I remember James Altucher saying something like, you know, if you launch a business, you should achieve at least one of the following, something along those lines. You know, get paid, get laid, or lose weight. So you've done the get laid stuff. Yep. You've done the get paid stuff, because that's the book. That's the book stuff. How about the lose weight? I mean, you worked out, you figured all that stuff out.
No, I just do that on my own. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't get paid for losing weight. No.
Well, it sounds like that's, you know, if you do that one, then you'll do the 3 elements of James Altucher's strategy.
Yeah, right.
Now, one of the things that I found very interesting is you wrote a little while back about quitting the angel investment stuff, and so I wanted to kind of, towards the end of this podcast, kind of talk about business in general. I mean, basically, this podcast to me is really about. I put it together for you know, entrepreneurs, in particular tech entrepreneurs who are my tribe, to kind of think differently, think in a disruptive way. Obviously, Book in a Box is completely disruptive. It has technical elements, but you've also, you know, invested in other businesses. You know, I think you said something like $1.2 million in
about
various
80 different
companies. Yeah, 80 different companies. and you know, you're going to multiply your money there based on your assessment, but you're kind of quitting the investment gig, or at least that's what you had said. Like, what's the deal with that?
Yeah, so I'm not quitting investing. I'm just quitting angel investing. So I have a wealth manager who kind of handles my money, and I just leave it up to him. Like, I just don't worry about that stuff. So what happened is, when I started angel investing, it was like 2009, 2010, and that was a different world. There were a lot of tech startups and a lot of good ones. We were kind of coming out of the recession. It wasn't a deep tech recession. It was more of a general economy recession. So there were a lot of great, smart people with smart ideas, and there was not a lot of capital. And so it was really easy to get into angel investing, and it was really easy to find great deals. Now everyone has figured out that there's a lot of money to be made there. And so it's really hard to find good deals, and it's really hard to find them for a good price. And so what I kind of realized is that the only way to be a really, truly effective angel investor was to basically do it full time, to make it a job. And I looked around, and I could have done that, but I looked around at sort of the possibilities, and I realized that there's a much better opportunity for me in building my own company than there is investing in other people. And not that investing in other people is bad at all. If you're good at that and you want to do that, you should. But there's way more ideas than there are people who can execute. Whereas right now, like, there's an abundance of ideas, and then there's a lack of execution, which is bad for investors, but it's good for executors. And I could be either one. So I decided to go be an executor. You know, like my decision might have been opposite. If there had been very few ideas and a ton of executors, maybe I would have just gone the other way, you know, and I would have just invested and helped someone else. But I mean, I think Book in a Box is a really fantastic idea. And so I have the ability, the network, I'm the right guy at the right time with the right people around me. So that's sort of why I quit, because I feel like you can't be good at, maybe some people, Elon Musk can be good at two things, or good at three even.
Or 3 or 4 or 5, yeah.
Right. I'm not that good. I can be good at one thing at a time, at least. And so my thing is Book in a Box.
Well, you know, at least one of the things that I can imagine, having invested in 80 startups, each of which has multiple entrepreneurs, is, you know, just the opportunity to see some patterns, to learn, to gain something that you can apply to what you're doing. And, you know, I'm kind of wondering, having talked to all those people and have put some of your money, maybe directly, maybe some through others, do you think people find entrepreneurship, or do you think entrepreneurship finds them?
You know, I don't think, it's a good question. I don't think there's one answer. I think some people would be entrepreneurs regardless of when they were born or where they were, whether it's in jail or in Silicon Valley or anything in between. There are some people who are just never, ever going to be stopped. But I think most entrepreneurs are people who are situational. You know, given the right situation, they're going to start their own thing. I think it's just a continuum, like anything else, you know. But I definitely think it can be learned. If you have the desire and the drive, even a little bit of desire and drive, I absolutely think the skills and abilities can be learned. Because, I was not a very good entrepreneur 5 years ago, or definitely not 10 years ago. I learned. But what I had was the desire and the drive. So you can, if you really want to start a business, then you can learn how. The problem is most people want to start businesses for the wrong reason. You know, they care. It's about, kind of to tie it back to the first thing we talked about. Starting a business is about them. It's about them feeling cool because they're an entrepreneur, or about them making money, or it's about them. And at its core, entrepreneurship is a very altruistic giving act. Because in order to be an effective entrepreneur, it means you have started a business that solves a problem that is so important that people will pay you money for it. And I think most people don't understand that.
That's kind of what I was getting at with the question. I see. I actually just joined a Facebook group run by somebody that we both know, and I'm seeing people really encouraged to ultimately have romance around quitting their job and burning the boats and diving in head first, and even though they haven't really thought through kind of what the next steps are, and people think I did that, but I didn't. Like, it took me 6 months. I set up a bunch of consulting gigs before I pulled the plug. Lined up a gig as an entrepreneur residence with the VC. Like, I did, I laid the groundwork for what was going to be coming next, at least for 6 to 12 months before leaving a 6-figure job. And it's just, sometimes that you hear, you got to be all in and you got to quit your job. And I'm thinking, that a lot of people have been very successful. Steve Wozniak, like guys like that, and they stayed at their job until their business was getting some momentum. I mean, do you see that
of course
in the same way, or do you see it differently?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things going on there. For me, I had to burn the boats, but I shouldn't say because I didn't actually intentionally burn the boats. The boats were burnt for me because I was such a shit at my jobs. I got fired from everything. So I didn't. It's not like I was like decided I was going to do that. I had to find my own way because no one else would hire me, and I mean that literally. My own father fired me from the family business. I think what's going on with a lot of the people who kind of preach that sort of nonsense strategies, you got to burn the boats, you got to just go, just jump 2 feet, whatever. They're probably talking to entrepreneurs. I feel like people who want something without they want to want it, but they don't want to actually do the work for it, or take the risk. Actually, is the real thing, because it's scary to take a risk. Because if you take a risk, you can fail. And if you fail, a lot of people feel like if they fail, then that means they are a failure. And that's a frightening thing, and I get it. I get why a lot of people are afraid of that and don't want to do it.
But at the same time, though, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I feel like there's no such thing as one right way to do it. I think there are a few people for whom burn the boats and go do it is a good strategy, but the only people for whom that's a good strategy are the ones who clearly have something that is ready to go and makes a lot of sense, and they're just afraid to start or afraid to make the leap. But that's a small group of people, man. That's not the majority. The majority would do well to go in steps and stages and to kind of, depending on listen, if you don't have a family, you can burn the boats because who cares? If you got 2 kids, don't burn the boats, the kids are in them. Like you need to go in stages and be smart about it. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way. It just depends on the person.
Yeah, what I found is a bit ironic, and definitely found that myself, is that if you're actually doing the thing on the side, you can actually be more risky. You can take more risks with the decisions. You can be more ballsy. You can try to take bigger steps because you're not going to burn a hole in your boat that you might still be on. So taking the big risk of stepping out completely into the void. In fact, once you get out there and you're free falling, you get tentative, and you stop making the risks because everything depends on your success. Whereas if it's a thing on the side until it starts getting momentum, and you can sort of step over as that thing's got momentum from your full-time job or whatever it is, you can actually do crazier things.
I totally agree. I mean, there's a lot of people who write about that sort of aspect of it. If you have safety, if your base is safe, you can be much more extreme on the edges. I agree, totally. For most people, I think that's the right strategy, yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, do you have daily rituals? Obviously, I mentioned the Miracle Morning, and it's done some really cool things for me. I've never been a habit type person, a ritual type person. I had the illusion that made me more creative, like the messy desk kind of a paradigm. And I've actually taken up a bunch of that stuff. Getting up earlier, and I felt a little kind of foolish doing it, but it's actually been pretty awesome. I've done some things now regularly for quite a while, and that's what kind of pushed me over the line. So I'm curious around daily rituals. We talked about some of those already, but I'm just curious what are some of the other things that you do that are more future looking rather than tactical or strategic, but just more foundational?
What I found, I think I used to have the sort of messy desk type paradigm too a long time ago, but then once I really became a professional writer, I realized that there's no such thing as a sloppy professional. You might be sloppy in other aspects of your life, but not around your writing and your habits. And actually having fairly strict habits lets you be more creative and frees you up to be more creative. So, I talked about my morning ritual. I'm only 18 months into a new ritual, actually not even, really 6 months, with my son. Like, I've never been a morning person really, and I've never been a gregarious person in the morning, but now it's like, all right, I'm going to spend an hour or so every morning with my son and my wife. And at first I think it actually aggravated me a little bit. I just wasn't used to it. And then once I kind of was like, once my son grew up a little bit and got to be like, he's not, how like babies are, they're just kind of blobs and there's just not much to do with them. But like at 18 months, he's like a human now, he's starting to talk. He's fun, to interact with. And so like now it's like actually really kind of enjoyable. And so like that sort of like the morning starts off with the things that matter most, actually. My wife and my son, and then we have like our ritual is, like I said, make coffee, watch Daniel Tiger, eat his little snack, and it is kind of fun. It's those little things that are really enjoyable. Then when he leaves, he goes to school. I meditate. I focus on myself and my work. I meditate, and then I dive into work. The other thing. This isn't really a ritual, but my wife and I do this. We at least once a month, usually more, we travel, even if it's just for like overnight or 2 nights, and we go somewhere, because we're both food and wine nerds. So instead of looking at like our lives like, okay, we're going to be miserable 99% of the year, and then we'll take a 2-week vacation that we'll rush around in and pretend that we love, we actually take a lot of little mini vacations during the year. For things that we care about or are fun or whatever. And we're actually on one right now. I'm doing this call from a hotel in Houston because we're doing a Domaine Loire dinner, which is like one of the best wineries in the world. They're having a really like a fancy dinner at Pappas Brothers Steakhouse. And so in a few hours, we're about to go drink some of the best wine in the world. And so like the little things like that seem like, what does it matter? It's actually, what I find is that we always have 2 or 3 of those coming up at all times. So, like, it's sort of like whenever you have, like, a shitty day or something like that, you're like, in 3 days we're going to go to New York and go to, 11 Madison Park. Or, tomorrow's the Domaine Loire dinner. Or, if you have cool things coming up that you enjoy and you're excited about, it makes the downtimes better. And if you have, you need 2 things. You need a family or just relationships, friends. It doesn't have to be family, that sustain you on a day-to-day basis, and things coming up that you look forward to and excited about. And at pretty much any income level above starvation, that makes your life pretty enjoyable.
Dan Martel and his wife Renee, I'm sure do it, and they disconnect. I think they do it like once a quarter, and they just completely disconnect. Have you done a kind of off the map?
I have not done that.
I have not. It's kind of scary.
Well, we got a young company and a young kid, so that's not going to happen for us soon.
So what's next for Tucker Max? I mean, obviously you got Book in a Box. It's taking up your time. It sounds like you're writing a lot, but you have decades and decades and decades ahead of you. Is there kind of one big, what they call the big hairy audacious goal that goes supersedes all of that stuff?
No, man. Right now it's just I spend time on the things that are interesting to me and I care about. And right now it's Book in a Box, man. We've only just started. I think it's way beyond book. It can be way beyond books. Like, we can create processes to turn ideas into a lot of different finished creative work, and that's sort of the goal. Is to really nail that.
I think you've uncovered something pretty magical, and I'm just so excited to kind of see what else is going to come up with it. I mean, there's just so many people, not just with knowledge, but ideas that have been just sitting in their books or in their little notebooks. I have zillions of pages in Evernote of ideas, and I do the Altucher kind of come up with 10 things every day kind of thing, and all of that stuff is gonna have to come out somewhere, and I think what you're creating is pretty novel. It's going to just allow a lot of people to open up that just would die with these things in their head.
Dude, that is literally the point. The point is to unlock the world's wisdom, man. That's how civilization advances. That's how culture is created. Is each of us individually figure something out, even if it's very small, and we share it in a collective pool. And if we don't write these things down, and then we can't share it with the maximum number of people, and they're not going to survive us in our lives. That's sort of the goal, man, is to record the world's wisdom, Well,
that's awesome. I thank you for doing that, and I want to be sort of conscious of your time and getting prepped for drinking some amazing wines. I want to thank you for everything that you do and the sharing and the giving. I can't wait to get this first book done. I can't stop thinking about it, and I think your method is one of the things that has triggered that. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for your time on the podcast as well.
Cool, man. I'm glad I could help, dude.
All right. Have a great night, man.
You too, man.
All right. Bye-bye.
Well, there you go, folks. As I told you in the intro, Tucker is a pretty interesting guy. And the whole Book in a Box concept, it can be stretched to so many different aspects. The ability to just interview somebody and then turn their wisdom, knowledge, and experience into whatever medium makes sense is actually more revolutionary than I had realized at the beginning. So I'm really excited to see what Tucker and his crew really turn this revolution into. All right, well, until next time.